Hey guys, Morgan's Maintenance. Today's tool talk is going to be a tool talk more than a tool review, even though I'm going to talk about this M12 jig saw a lot. Basically, I have converted mine into an M12 coping saw, and mine's going to stay that way. Now, I'm also going to put a chapter in here because I'm going to go back and reassemble my jigsaw the way that it originally was and then put it back to this. So if you're interested in doing this with your jigsaw, I'm going to show you how to install the one that I purchased on your jigsaw. So again, I'll put chapters down below for that. But again, this is the coping saw attachment for, it says most jigsaws. Now, whether it will fit with yours, I'm sure I'll get some comments below. Will it fit with whatever? I have no idea. I put it on this jigsaw. That's the only one that I know. And I did it on this jigsaw for a couple reasons. One is it's an older jigsaw. Now, it's not that old to me. I've not had it for a long time. I'm actually really surprised that Milwaukee hasn't come out with a M12 fuel version of a jigsaw because I think this one's pretty old. I'm not real sure. This is the 2445-20. It's going to run you about 88 bucks on Amazon, which isn't a bad price for a small jigsaw like this. And I really like the size of it. It fits in your hand really well. It's got enough power to do most things. I don't have an issue with how long the batteries last on it for the amount of cuts that I do with it. The one thing that I really despised about this saw was this base plate right here. And it's a nice plate, it's sturdy, all those things. It's a good size to work with the saw, but you have this adjustment to be able to go to different angles. This lever fits in there. Again, I'll put it back together later if you're interested in seeing that. And it allows you to open and close it and adjust your angle of your jigsaw blade, which is a nice feature, except for that always works loose all the time. So you'll be cutting and then it'll just change angles on you, and you'll look at your cut and all your cuts will be slanted. So I just really despise that. You can get in there and really tighten it down if you want to leave it at, flat, and it works okay. Or maybe if you took out that screw and put some Loctite on it, if you knew that you don't typically are going to use an angle with it, that's probably what I would end up doing with that. But mine is going to stay this way. Now, typically in the past, I would always cope using my grinder, as I've mentioned before, with a flapper wheel. I cut stuff on a 45 and then I go in and grind that out. But the thing about that is it's pretty dusty. So if you're working in a finished space, which a lot of time when you're getting into doing the trim work, a lot of finishes are already in place. So you don't want to just go inside somewhere and just start making a big dust storm. And sometimes outside access isn't close, so you can't very well go out and cut everything and walk back and forth like crazy. So but in the event that you could do that, even sometimes you get profiles where it's this little bitty thing like this or something like that. Very hard to get that real thick sanding pad up in there. So then you got to do a combination of, using your sander to eat out all this and then finishing this out with a file or a hand coping saw, whatever it is. So sometimes it just didn't work well. I had never used this before, but I know a lot of people like that Collins coping foot. So again, the Collins coping foot's going to run you about 30 bucks. And that's the one everybody talks about. That's all that I knew there was. But whenever I searched coping foot on Amazon, this one came up for $15 and it looked identical to me. The reviews were pretty good. So I decided I was going to give it a shot. Didn't know if it was going to fit on the jigsaw or not, but I didn't know if the Collins was going to either. So I went ahead and went with this one, and I really like it. I mean, this is pretty much going to be I'm going to leave mine set up this way. I will never probably put this back on because, again, started a trim job yesterday, about 2,000 linear feet worth of base, and then 2,000 linear feet worth of shoe. And again, I always like to cut mine on a 45, and then I use that as my guide. And here's the first time of me actually using it. So I'm kind of getting the hang of it because, again, I've never used this before. And the fit was okay. I'm going to be honest with you. It wasn't great, but it was caulkable because this wasn't like it was a, $1 million house or anything like that. But I wasn't real happy with it. But over the course of the day, as I kept using it and kept getting the hang of it, because again, I hadn't even ever used one of these before, period, I got to where it was working pretty good for me. And I mean, I really, really like it. It's probably my go-to for coping now. By all means, I'll never get out anything else again. Now with this one, I am using, it's the Bosch T119. I think it was just basic wood, speed wood or something like that. it seems to be working well. They did recommend another Bosch bit of some other kind as far as from the coping manufacturer. So I'll probably get some of those and see if it makes a big difference. It's probably tighter teeth or something like that. But I think this works really well because, again, you can just get in there to whatever angle you want to go at. It's kind of like the base plate, your square base plate's no longer going to be getting in your way. So you can now come in here and just cut on that line from underneath. It's real visible. And then so then you can come in from under here too, you know, and start cutting the shapes out. Basically, I'm not going to do that here because the volume changes like crazy whenever I use a saw like that. But again, I think it's great. You guys let me know in the comments below if you've used a jigsaw with this Collins coping foot on it. I think it's pretty good. And I think for 88 bucks, if you can get this jigsaw for $88 on Amazon and you can buy this foot for $15, you got around 100 bucks in a 12-volt battery powered coping saw that is easy to hold in one hand, because I can't imagine, again, I've not used this on any other jigsaw. I've never used this before, but I can't imagine that there's a better jigsaw out there probably to put this thing on, because you just have the one hand control. You got one hand to hold your workpiece and then one hand to hold your saw. It probably saves you from having to use clamps and things like that, even though I'm sure that's probably the safer way to do it. But if you can actually use this hand to hold it down, that's why another reason why I'm not finishing this here, because if you just have small piece holding this out here like that, it's hard. But if you had this like on your, I normally was making my cut and using my saw stand as a place to basically set this, and then I had this sitting right there and I was cutting it whenever I got done, by the time that, you know, I finally got the hang of it. But I think it's great. You guys let me know in the comments below. I'm going to go ahead and put this old base plate back on, and then I'll show you how to transition it from this to that if that's something you're interested in. If not, I appreciate you watching. I hope that this was useful in some other way, but let's go ahead and get into changing this out to the coping saw. All right, guys, so in the package, you're going to get the coping foot. They give you a couple of different adapters and some different things to try to make it work with, I'm sure, different jigsaws. What we're going to use is this thin piece. This one's too thick. You won't be able to get it to mold. So all you're going to use is the coping foot, this channel here, the washers, the screw, and the nut, and then the thinner of the two adapters. So this one you can lay off to the side. And the directions on this, you know, stink as far as for, you know, it even talks about the Collins coping foot. There's what all it can do. But it doesn't really give you crazy good in directions as far as for how to install it, because it's different probably for every jigsaw. So again, with this one, you're going to need a T10, Torx 10, Torx 15, a Torx 7, and then also a 5/32 hex key, or either an Allen wrench or a bit or whatever you've got. And that's what you're going to need first. You're going to get that 5/32 bit, and we've got to take off the plastic on the bottom of this plate here and access this screw right up in there. That's the 5/32. And this is the thing about the jigsaw that I didn't like, is this plate here. I mean, again, it's a nice feature that you can pull this forward and tilt your jigsaw, but this right here works itself forward and stuff to where this ends up moving on you a lot. Again, you can tighten this screw right here down that we're about to take out and kind of really crank down on it, and it will help, but it just works itself loose with the vibration over time. So again, we're going to open that up and slide that back. You can see how this slides forward and back. If you slide it back, it gives you better access to that screw. And this is a reverse thread, so we're going to go clockwise and remove this. And what that does is that screw threads into this handle here. So once that comes out, this pulls loose. You won't actually back that screw out. It's kind of like it's got a big shoulder there, and that just threads into this little knob here. So that's basically what's going to be on your jigsaw that you're going to take off. And then there's one more thing that you've got to take off, because as I'll show you in a minute, whenever you get this lined up here, you can see this little guard right here that helps guard your finger from the blade. Once you put this on, it kind of sticks out right there and gets in the way. It ends up bumping. So to get that out, that's where you're going to need these Torx screwdrivers. You have a T10 here and one on this side, so we're going to take those out. Again, that's a Torx 10. Now you're going to take a Torx 15. You got two here, one on that side. We're going to take those out. That's going to allow this to come off and give us access to these two screws, which are the Torx 7, which I didn't have any of. So luckily I got this insulated Klein screwdriver here lately that had these Torx sizes on that. So these are just little bitty screws here. Very small. And then to get that out, that's kind of pressed over in there, I had to take a pair of pliers of some kind and basically get up in here and squeeze. This was probably the hardest part of getting it out earlier because they're in there pretty good. But you can eventually get them worked out, and then you can pull that out. Now I'm probably going to go ahead and put these two little screws, I'm going to put them back in there so that, you know, I just know I won't lose them over time if I ever want to put them back in. So that's what I'm going to do. You don't have to do this because all that does is hold in that little metal thing that we just took out. So now you'll take this, slide it back on. You have to move this handle over towards the middle to get it inside that slot. And now you just put your Torx screws back in. You got your two Torx 15s, then you got your two Torx 10s. Now, normally I think what they expect for you to do is to put this bolt through your jigsaw and then tighten the nut down and use that, but we can't do that because the nut has to fit in this slot, since that handle that we took off previously, since that was the nut and it fit inside of there. So that's where our nut has to go. So we're going to take the foot, and this is basically going to be our washers. You got two washers, the screw, and then this is just something flat for the head of your screw to fit onto. And then you'll also take the skinnier of the two adapters. This is how it's going to go right here. And then you've got the coping foot. So ultimately that's the sandwich that you need to make for it to work with this. This gives you enough threads sticking out into this gap to catch into the nut, and it allows you to line it up correctly and kind of get that lined up to where your blade is going to work. And you want to push this all the way to the front. I don't have my O-light with me, so I'm going to hold a screwdriver in my mouth as I do this, so hopefully you can see. But you're going to take your nut, put it on a pair of needle nose, slide it into place, and then take your screw and get it started in that nut by hand. Just get one thread or so on it. So once you get it started, keep holding it. Get your Phillips screwdriver, start getting it tight. And then what you want to do is slide the coping foot all the way back towards you. It adjusts this way, but you want it all the way back so you got room for that blade to fit in there. So pull it all the way back towards the trigger and then finish tightening that down. If you're going to leave yours like this, you might want to put some Loctite or something on that. I'm going to leave mine this way, but in all honesty, I used it quite a bit today. Didn't have any issues with anything loosening up on me. And again, to insert your blade, it's the same as before. You slide this lever, put your blade down in there, release, and now it's in there. Put in your battery. Now you're good to go. So that's how you install the version that I ordered from Amazon. Again, it was $15. That's how you install it on the M12 Jig Saw to make you a M12 coping saw. Hope it was useful again. I appreciate you watching the video. If maybe you, the guys who only watched it for the first half, but maybe you came here because you want to install this on yours. So I hope this helps you. Again, I think this is a great tool. Easy amount of weight in your hand to be able to do it one-handed, so it's still like a one-handed coping saw, but now you got a battery powered one, so I think it's great. So again, hope it was useful. You guys let me know in the comments below, but as always, stay safe, have a blessed day, and I'll see you on the next video.